Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Heretical Heathen Podcast. It is I, the Arch Heathen, the Trollman of Wisconsin, that wise wanderer, the one who's going through the realms seeking knowledge, your host, Robert Knox. And this week, we're going to pivot a little bit and talk about something that's been on my mind all week. I think some people have this misconception that a spiritual path is sort of like a straight ascent up the mountain. But it doesn't appear to be the case. In fact, there are some weeks where not a lot is happening, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, you wake up and you seem to have made a lot of progress. Now, why this is the case, I don't know. But I'm having one of those weeks where I feel completely cut off from the more than human, in more ways than one. Like, I don't feel particularly connected. I feel very drained. In fact, before recording this, I slept almost 12 hours, and I just feel very tired all week. And despite all of the sleeping I'm doing, I'm not really dreaming either. There's been nothing going on. And so I feel more isolated than normal. And this happens periodically throughout the journey. I suppose in the woo space they'd probably say I'm having like a dark night of the soul movement, but the way that crystal hippies use that term, I often think is mostly bullshit. They kind of use it whenever they're not having a good day. But that's not what the dark night of the soul means. So originally, it was a concept that comes from Christian mysticism, particularly St. John of the Cross, and it describes like a profound period of spiritual emptiness. Maybe you'll be confused, you'll feel empty, you feel like God has abandoned you. And there's a little bit of that sense going on right now. During these moments, it's pretty common for people to feel a massive amount of just sadness and depression. They feel like sort of giving up on life. Some people feel like they lose an identity or a purpose or drive. Many will question a lot of the sort of beliefs and values they had, and they feel like nothing is really satisfying them. And I really want to place stress on these moments are absolutely normal. They are a part of the process. They may be even a test from the divine. Like, sure, you're willing to pray and do your ritual when things are going well for you and you feel great. What about when you're not? What about on your worst day? Are you willing to pray, do your bloats, submit to the divine on those days when everything is going terrible? And this is true with anything in life. Like, you're willing to work out when you're feeling great and motivated. What about the days when you're not? Can you get out of bed? Can you hit the gym? This affects everything you do. A pattern in one place in your life will ripple out, and that will affect other areas of your life. And heathens don't talk about this stuff. We're way too busy purity spiraling over genetics or talking about racism like it's the 70s. Like, we need to start addressing real people, real problems, and real, let's say, pit stops that you hit along your practice. And these dark night of the soul moments are sometimes the most vicious stops that one can hit. And maybe what I'm going through now isn't like a true dark night of the soul moment. It's really hard to say. Maybe I'm just having a rough season, especially now that it's summer. Do not like the summer at all. You know, sort of going through those moments where I've been questioning things that I took for granted. The rituals are still there. The philosophy is still there, but the certainty isn't necessarily there. There are things I sort of took for granted that I feel disconnected with now, and maybe that's the point. Maybe faith, or maybe in my case, devotion, isn't really proven when everything feels great. Maybe it's revealed in showing up when the experiences have gone quiet, when you don't get that oomph from your rituals that you once used to. And I think it's entirely possible, and this depends on how we read them, that we see these parallels in the myths. In some sense, this is like Odin hanging from the tree, these moments, that is. There's those moments of deep silence and suffering before the mysteries, before the runes are revealed to you. We also see this in the story of Odin and Mimir as well, where in order to gain wisdom and insight, emphasis on the insight, Odin is willing to sacrifice his eye. Now, I have a bit of a heretical read on that, where I think he's actually going inside of himself, and that's where Mimir's well is. It's in all of us. So he's not actually ripping an eye out. But the metaphor is still there. You still have to go through these moments of pain and suffering in order to gain. inner sight. And we kind of see this with Thor at Udgar Logi's, where despite being the strongest of the Aesir, he can't seem to empty a drinking horn, he can't lift a cat, and he can't defeat an old woman. And those are moments like the Dark Night of a Soul, or at least the closest thing we might find in the myths. Even Ragnarok can be part of this pattern, right? Before the end of a cycle, before the new Golden Age, we have to go through the Iron Age. We have to travel through the Kali Yuga. The world has to go into the water. The wolves must eat the sun in order for the cycle to begin anew before we can come up and be reunited with the good. We have to learn how to do the work. We have to learn how to orient towards the good, how to love the gods, even when things aren't going well. Now you might wonder, okay, how do we do this other than just continuing to do what we've been doing? And yeah, there's a bit of that. Just continue to wake up, pray, say whatever it is you have to say, do your blows, do your offerings, put like beer on your altars or whatever it is that you do. And don't just go through the motions. Try to do that with a sense of reverence, regardless of the feeling of emptiness. Now, I just learned a really interesting practice from a Hindu podcast I like to watch called Beer Biceps. The host, Ranveer, has a plethora of people from different, let's say, Hindu religions, even though the word religion is a little problematic when we're talking about some of the things going on in the East. But he had a guest on who talked about submitting their thoughts to the gods. And what he meant by this was he would take a thought, let's say maybe you're having like a sadness thought or a lustful thought. You sort of imagine that thought, and the way I'm doing it, as like an orb, and you place that thought at the deity's feet. And you sort of say, I submit this thought to you. Now, this sounds kind of weird, and we don't see a lot of this kind of stuff in the West, but I think we could incorporate it. And as a test, I did this when I was suffering at work. I submitted that thought to Odin. And when I felt better about it, I likewise submitted that thought. That way, I'm taking the pain and the reverence and the joy, and I'm submitting all of them to the deity. Now, despite the fact that I'm still, let's say, suffering, although I don't like to use that word, it's still forging a connection between me and what the Hindus would call my Ishta Devata, my personal deity. Oh, it's something I should rant about. We often hear in like the pagan sphere that, oh, having a patron deity is like having a patron saint, and that's a Christian concept. Well, no, it fucking isn't. We can look to the east, and what did the Hindus have? Well, they have Ishta deities, personal deities, and then they have a family deity. It's a deity their family practices. Or maybe worships or shows reverence to. These words get a little slippery in the East. But either way, this is a concept that they have in the East, and it's gone unbroken. It hasn't been influenced by Christianity. So having a personal deity, one that you chose, is absolutely fine. It's normal, and it's how paganism will naturally develop in the West. Now, a big problem with Western paganism, besides for the fact that we don't focus on actual people's lives, is that we don't read. Western pagans are some of the dumbest people on the planet, and they're proud of it. They proudly don't know anything about anything. They couldn't tell you the difference between these sects of Christianity that have been arguing for thousands of years, much less what's going on in other uninterrupted pagan practices like in the East, and they're seemingly proud of this ignorance. You know, I've once talked about Platonism and had heathens ask me, well, can you field dress a hog? And the answer is no. I can go to the store and buy anything I want. Why would I need to go hunt a hog? Now, that's not a dig at hunting. I grew up in a hunting culture. That's just me saying, look, like, we need to be better as Western pagans. And that's a big part of my project. I want the community to be better. I want us to stop being so dumb. I want us to stop talking about, like, Nazis and fascisms like it's the fucking 70s. Like, we need to move beyond this stuff into actual practice. I've been watching my content or listening to my content for a while. You'll notice that I am far more, I guess, esoteric, maybe you want to use the word pious, than most people in the Western pagan sphere. And I think that's important. That's something that we have to face as heathens and as Western pagans. We have to decide, and this is the most important question, what is the point of spirituality? What is the point of doing this? Do you have an altar to Odin because my ancestors did it? I mean, I guess that's fine, but I don't think that's the point. The point isn't to LARP as a fucking Norseman or to like worship the ancestors. Of course, we have ancestral veneration practices and there's nothing wrong with that, but are we trying to get closer to the gods? Are we looking for enlightenment? Are we trying to improve our lives? Yeah, my ancestors did it. That's cool for the few focus guys that are out there, but for the average person coming into this, there has to be more there. We need a support structure. We need an aim. We need like something like priests that they can talk to when they're having a bad time. We cannot continue to survive if we're just wandering through the woods yelling Hail Odin with horns of mead. We've been through this, and at some point we need to grow up. As soon as somebody asks, well, hey, what's a god? And your answer is, it's mysterious, shut up, your ancestors did it. They're going to leave. These people aren't going to stick around. Or if they're going through a dark night of the soul moment like I'm going through, and they ask you what's going on, and you say, suck it up, buttercup, just do your shit and move on, they're going to leave. Like, we have to grow up. We have to be adults about this. And not to get too overly political, but like a Christian nationalism is rising and Islam is spreading way faster than it's ever spread. It's said to be the world religion by like 2050, and this religion doesn't play around, guys. Like, they don't fuck around. They're not progressive, they're not Western. They kill people who are pagans, who are in other communities as well. We can't do this LARP for much longer. We need institutions, we need to grow up, we need people to have a support structure so they can develop things like families and they can get over some of these problems they have in their life. No more crystal hippie, anti-racist, anti-fascist bullshit. No more purity spiraling over who's got the most pure DNA. The shit's done. We're over it. We're sailing on to better pastures. And if this message resonates with you, then let's get on the team. Let's do stuff together. Let's work together. Send your ideas to me. If you're a Buddhist, let me know what you do. If you're a Hindu, let me know what you do. Let's work together, East and West, to build something real, something substantial, something that will move our communities forward and help people, real people. Well, this episode took a wild left turn from the original premise, and if that gets me called Islamophobic or whatever, I'm fine with that. I mean, I do think it's mostly a dangerous religion, and we should kind of be worried about what's happening with it. I don't want to see my wife shoved into a burqa or people I know murdered because they don't have the right religion. It's something we need to actually draw attention to. We can't stop, or we can't be pussyfooting around anymore. We have to focus on this issue. But let's go back to the Dark Night of the Soul thing. What have I found that actually works? And there's some sense where kind of nothing, but that one small practice of just submitting my thought to the deity, something about that is comforting. Something about that makes me feel more, let's say, it feels like it's deepened the relationship with the deity. It makes it feel like it's more than just like a thing I do at an altar or with my rituals. It feels like it's a constant presence in my life, might be a good way of putting it. We tend to like anthropomorphize the gods and turn them into people who are riding fancy horses or in spaceships that are flying around. And we often forget that these things are souls, and maybe where they exist, time and space don't function the same way we do. And so maybe they're all pervasive, they're around us all the time, and we just don't have the eyes to see that. And we need practices to sort of help develop that state of consciousness, to develop those Odinic eyes. And something as small as just submitting your thoughts to the deity can really help get you there. Now, if you've been through these moments yourself and you did something that you found really helped, leave me a note in the comments. Send me to something on Twitter or Instagram, wherever you happen to be hearing this. And that isn't a call for just heathens, for just Ossachuar. If you're a Hindu, if you're a Buddhist, or even if you're for some reason a Christian who's listening to this, let me know what you did to get through these moments. If you liked this week's episode, leave a comment, like the video, share it around. It really means a world of difference, and it helps get what I'm doing out there. I feel like I'm starting to get better at speaking. I'm starting to get more into the flow of these things, starting to put my ideas out there. I feel like I'm getting better at communicating, sort of. I try not to edit these things too much because I'm trying to be more authentic. It really drives me crazy how sometimes you listen to a podcast and even if they're not reading from a script, they clearly have edited it to the degree that you can tell they're trying to be more corporate and not real. And I think we've lived through this period kind of long enough where everything's trying to turn into like a sterilized late night corporate show. And I'm kind of over it. I kind of want real authenticity. I want to feel like I'm listening to a real person, not something a fucking AI generated. No hate on AI. I actually kind of enjoy it. And I think we're going to do great things with AI in the future. But yeah, if you guys enjoy it, yeah, leave a like, leave a comment. Thank you all for listening and have a wonderful night.